I might be able to get out of the room.
You all right?
No. They,
Alive now.
Thank you, Jess. Welcome everyone to the meeting. Welcome to councillors and welcome to those people that are watching the live stream. Firstly, the Glamorgan Spring Bay Council acknowledges the traditional owners of our region and recognises their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past and present. Present in the chamber today, we have Councillor Neil Edwards, we have Councillor Kenneth Gregson, Councillor Carol McQueenie, Councillor Robert Churchill, Councillor Robert Young, and we have a new councillor, Councillor Jenny Woods, who is now Councillor Jenny Walker.
Yes.
And that will be very difficult to get used to. So welcome, Councillor Walker, and congratulations on your beginning with a marriage.
Thank you.
To begin with, we have a request for a leave of absence, and in accordance with Regulation 39 of the Local Government Meeting and Procedures Regulations 2015, the chairperson hereby requests leave of absence for Mayor Cheryl Arnold for this meeting of council for personal reasons. May I have a recommendation that reflects that? Councillor Walker.
Thank you. I'll move that council grant Mayor Cheryl Arnold leave of absence for the meeting of council held on Tuesday, 28th of January 2025.
Thank you. I'll ask for a vote on that. All those for? Thank you. That's unanimous. In attendance today from our administration staff, we have our Acting General Manager and Director of Infrastructure and Works, Mr. Peter Porch. We have a new addition today, Miss Christy McConnell, who's sitting in on our meeting today with Miss Jasmine Kerr and looking after our minutes and our technical side of the things. And we've also got our Acting Director of Planning, Mr. James Bonner, in the room with us. I don't believe we have any late reports.
No late reports.
No. Thank you. I would now ask at 1.5 if any elected members to indicate if they have any interest personally or via a close associate as defined in section 49 of the Local Government Act 1993, or 2, any conflict as described in the Model Code of Conduct for councillors in any item included in the agenda. And that's a no. Part 2 is confirmation of minutes. 2.1, ordinary meeting of council, 10th of December. There's a recommendation on page 6, if someone would like to move that. Councillor Walker.
Thank you. I'll move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on the 10th of December 2024 at 2 p.m. be confirmed as a true and correct record.
I have a seconder. Councillor Robert Young. If there's no comment, we put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. 2.2, date and purpose of workshops held. There was 2 workshops, one on the 10th of December and one on the 14th of January. There's a recommendation on page 8. Councillor Edwards.
I move that the council notes the information.
Thank you. Okay, well, all those in favour?
Oh, we need a seconder.
A seconder, sorry. Yes, we do. Councillor Young. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes.
I wish to put a motion, please.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I think that's all right. Yes.
The motion is that council requests that the Director of Local Government's urgent involvement to ensure the stable operation of Glamorgan Spring Bay Council.
Seconder.
Is that?
Seconder. Can we have that again? Sorry.
Oh, sorry, yes, and I'll
Yeah.
pass these out.
Yeah, have you got a copy? Thank
Yep.
you. And one for Jazz.
Like me to read it again?
Yes, if you would, thank you.
Motion that council requests the Director of Local Government's urgent involvement to ensure stable operation of Glamorgan Spring Bay Council.
Where's this going?
Okay, so, can we have a seconder? Councillor Gregson is the seconder. Is that? Yeah, okay, that's fine. So we will move to discuss, or would you? Discussion, thank you. So we'll open it up to discussion, and would you like to start that discussion, please, Councillor McQueenie?
Yeah, I put the motion on the basis that as of now, council finds itself with only one of its 4 executive officers in the workplace. This is untenable to stable and functional operations for an organisation such as this, and the Office of Local Government has the ability to provide immediate advice.
Would anyone else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Churchill.
I'd just like to support Councillor McQueenie's motion in this case. I think the point that she's made covers exactly what we need to know, and any action from here, I think, needs to be considered. Thank you.
Councillor Edwards.
I would have thought that this would have been a good idea to have been brought up at a workshop, not plonked on us at a council meeting when a vote is going to happen without us having time to go through this at a workshop and get a more advice or opinions there. I think this has just been thrown on us out of the blue. That's my thoughts.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak for or against the motion?
Yeah,
Councillor
thank
Walker?
you. I'll concur with Councillor Edwards on this one. I understand it, but it would have been nice to have been forewarned,
Yeah.
basically, especially one of this seriousness. And yeah, I'm just a wee bit disappointed that we weren't included in a heads up, for want of a better word. You know, I understand the sentiment and I get what Councillor McQueenie is doing, but gee, sometimes being held in the dark is not real good when you're put on the spot to make a serious decision like this.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. I'm leaning towards that opinion. I would be a little bit interested in what the involvement would be, and perhaps I could direct that to our General Manager as to whether he thinks that involvement would be helpful or unhelpful or of use to council.
Look, it hasn't been run by me either. However, the Office of Local Government there is there to provide assistance around a range of things. There may be some assumptions around why one of the officers not being present today, but they may be incorrect. Anyhow, I'd certainly be supportive of consulting with the Office of Local Government with respect to challenges we'll be facing at any time. This particular one, we've got recruitment underway for one of those positions with applications closing. I think within a week of them closed already. Recruitment does take a little bit of time, so we'd be unlikely to see somebody come into that role for another month, at least maybe 6 weeks, subject to a successful recruitment process. We've got other actions in place to supplement other responsibilities of council. So there are. It's not that we don't have capacity to deal with things, but that to satisfy councillors' concerns around that, I'm very happy to see the Office of Local Government consult around that.
Thank you. Just to go a little further with that, perhaps it wouldn't be what you're saying to ensure the stable operation of the Spring Bay Council. It would be to perhaps get advice and potentially gain some advantage in recruitment. The stable operation, having the local government director involved doesn't necessarily lead to the fact that it ensures a stable operation. We're saying, I don't quite agree that we're in an unstable operation, is my opinion. So we're saying that we're in an unstable position at the moment, which you've just countered and potentially said that we aren't. Well, you've said definitively that we aren't. So on that note, I suppose I wouldn't support that motion. I would probably be interested in talking to the local government for assistance, but not under that motion. So would you like to close? I'm sorry, Councillor Gregson.
Just with regard to the motion, I think it's a good idea to seek the independent and impartial advice director of local government in this matter. I think it'd be rather beneficial to council to consult the director, and I'll be very interested and to have his opinion on this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Gregson. And just further to that, I suppose what you're saying is quite correct. I think most of us would think that is a reasonable thing to go and do, but the motion doesn't reflect that. Motion says Council requires the Director of Local Government's urgent involvement to ensure stable operation of Spring Bay, Glamorgan Spring Bay Council. And I suppose as councillors we need to decide whether we're in an unstable operation and whether urgent intervention is needed. According to Acting General Manager, that isn't the case. To my mind, that isn't the case. But again, I'm open to getting advice from absolutely, but I just wouldn't be able to support this motion on the wording. Councillor
Am I
Walker.
able to speak again?
Yes, I think you should.
You happy for me? Yeah, that's okay. Is this something that, through you to Mr. Porch, is this something that you could do without a motion in operation?
Well, I think it is something I could do without a motion, certainly.
Yeah.
We also have the Office of Local Government coming to speak to us here in the workshop in February.
Can I further? Because this is to me, this is borderline in getting this group here involved in the administrative arm, and that's not our job. So I certainly won't be supporting this motion in that regard, because that is not our job. But if you can do that, Mr. Porch, without a motion, I don't have a problem with it. But I don't think it's. I think we're just stepping a little bit too far in.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Would anyone else like to speak for or against the motion? On that basis, I'll ask Councillor McQueenie to close.
There are demonstrable risks that this council faces at the moment, and I believe it's completely prudent that as councillors, in the best interest of our community, seek the advice from those who can provide immediate assistance under the legislation that sits around local government. And I can't see why that urgent assistance wouldn't be something that was important for our council.
Thank you. I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? That's for Councillor McQueenie, Councillor Gregson, Councillor Churchill, Councillor Young. Those against? Councillor Edwards, Councillor Walker and Councillor Simons. I believe we're up to public question time, number 3. I don't believe there are any public questions.
No public questions?
No, thank you. I don't believe there are any questions on notice. 3.1. I I believe we have one question without notice at 3.2, which which our acting general manager will now read out in full. That's right.
Dear Mayors and Councillors, water supply and restrictions Orford and Triabunna. It's reported in the Mercury newspaper 25th January 2025 that TasWater advises the east coast towns of Orford and Triabunna are facing water restrictions again, as concerns increase about the adequacy of our water supply for service to towns. We were the first towns in the state to enter water restrictions last year, and history reflects that in previous years we entered water restrictions roughly about the same time. Despite the issue of adequacy of water supply to the townships and commercial operations, I understand that new residential subdivisions have been and continue to be approved by the Glamorgan Spring Bay Council within the townships. Question the appropriateness of approval of new residential subdivisions or any other redevelopments within the community when clearly the water supply to existing residents and commercial properties is at risk of falling below an adequate and sustainable level. Understanding that in consideration of each development application, the GSBC relies on advice from TasWater as to whether the water supply is sustainable. I understand that TasWater has done and continues to provide assurances that the water supply is sustainable, and on that basis, the GSBC, subject to any other development impediments, has no option other than approve the proposed developments. In the past, TasWater has reportedly blamed low rainfall, but I feel the rainfall is average for the past several years. Low rainfall seems to be the new average rainfall, and TasWater must keep this in mind. It is not sufficient to blame the influx of tourists and shackies in the towns, as this is part and parcel of the infrastructure and makeup of the community and has been for many years. Clearly, an adequate water supply is not sustainable for a community, including consideration of the influx of people during holiday periods without water restrictions. I feel that TasWater considers the revenue-raised provision of water supply services to the proposed developments outweighs the real risk and consequences of water shortages and restrictions. In my view, in relation to new or proposed developments, it's irresponsible of TasWater to assure the GSBC and therefore the community that the water supply is adequate to absorb further residential and or commercial growth. The term greed above risk springs to mind in relation to TasWater. Considering the matters raised, I hold a strong view that the GSBC should strongly question and challenge any continued assurance by TasWater that the current water supply is adequate to accommodate the proposed development. I ask that the Council please explain the following in consideration of proposed residential and commercial developments. 1. GSBC views on the issue of water supply to the proposed developments. 2. Process of approval as it relates to the issue of water supply. 3. Approaches to and any assurances provided by TasWater in the consideration of approval of new developments. 4. The GSBC strategy for addressing the issue of water supply to the community now and into the future. I request that my letter and the matters raised are tabled in an open ordinary council meeting for the attention of councillors prior to developing and providing a response. Pending the response of the GSBC, I intend to take this matter to TasWater and seek their comment.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that letter, I'd like to move a motion that the letter be forwarded to TasWater for it to respond to the matters that were raised pertinent to TasWater in the letter, so we can hear what TasWater has to say.
Councillor Young, could I just probably make the point there that I suspect our acting general manager will contact TasWater and ask for a response, and most likely present the letter to them anyway as part of his.
I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, I suspect we'll wait till we get a report back from.
If it could be on the agenda for next meeting, to just make sure that the response or lack of it doesn't escape us.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the letter has been forwarded by the Mayor to TasWater.
Oh, I see. Right. Thank you.
Just through the acting mayor, would it be advisable to ask TasWater to address council what is the future and pertinent guidelines that they have for future water use and new developments? In particular, I'd like to, I know that the Barossa Dam, when it overflows, Tassal can draw water from it. Now, I'd like to ask Tassal what compliance issues and what
Point
data?
of
No,
order,
yeah,
point
sorry.
of order, sorry, councillor Green, you're introducing new
Information, yeah.
information into,
You can ask those questions to Taswater if they're here presenting to us, but now's not the time to be asking those questions. So, point taken, and I'm sure that Acting General Manager will discuss that. We have had Taswater in the room with us before, and I wouldn't say it's been that helpful. It's a company line that water, plenty of water for everyone, according to Taswater.
But do you think that we can ask them again? And with that cogent letter, it's a very good letter.
Potentially, yes.
Through Jim, we have had these discussions with them numerous times. And I've had discussions with them privately as well numerous times, and we get the same answer every time,
But,
with exactly the same arguments as Rob's used.
Councillor McQueen.
If I may, they did advise about 4 or 5 months ago at the local government conference that they were partway through their planning for this region. So it might be that their planning outcome would be helpful to know, to share.
Hopefully our Acting General Manager can enact that in some way or form and get a response from them initially to the letter and then potentially with a presentation on the municipality's future or their plans for the future. Section 4 of our agenda is the Planning Authority section. We have nil reports, so we'll move on to our financial reports. 5.1 is financial reports for November and December 2024. Our responsible officer is the Director of Corporate and Community, Elise Bain, who isn't in the room with us today, but there is a recommendation on page 12. If someone would like to move it, Councillor Churchill.
I move that council receives and notes the financial reports as attached to this report for the period ended November and December 2024.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Walker. Councillor Churchill, do you have any comments or questions you'd like answered?
Just a quick comment, if I may, Mayor. It was rather interesting to get the 2 months figures sat there in front of you for a change, and not that I couldn't have searched that out in the past, but to have those 2 sets of figures there and just see the financial movements over such a short period was an interesting exercise, and it's I have no problems with the reports at all. I think they're very good. Thank you.
Good. Does anyone else have a comment or question? Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, I was just, I don't know whether I probably am stupid, but on page 8 of the attachments, Coles Bay Foreshore, percentage of cost spent, 617%. Is that typo or something? What's that again?
Well, it's not going to be correct in the sense of that sort of percentage overspend. I think through you, Mr. Chairman, that I don't believe we have an overspend.
No.
What it is reflecting is the amount of carry forward, I would suggest, as opposed to the overall expenditure.
Yeah, it just seemed a bit.
Project was $1 million worth, so for it to be
617 over.
for us to spend $6 million, so
Yeah.
I don't think we have.
No, I didn't think we had either. I just was wondering whether it was maybe when the director comes back, she can explain what it means. Computers, yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments? If not, I'll move the motion. All those for? That's a unanimous yes. Thank you. Section 6 is the Section 24 committees, of which there are no reports. Section 7 is our information report, which is the domain of our Acting General Manager, Mr. Peter Porch. There is a recommendation on page 19. So, Councillor Walker.
yeah, I'll move that council notes the information.
Can I have a seconder? Councillor Gregson. And Councillor Walker, would you like to ask any questions?
Yes,
or comment?
If I may, I have 2 questions on page 15 under roads, bridges, footpaths and curbs. I'm just wondering, through you to the acting general manager, where council is with regards to the wooden bridge replacement on Bamwell Road and the road maintenance. If it's in the works at the moment.
Through you, Mr Chair, is there a dot point? Which dot point?
No, it's not dot point. I'm asking questions because it's not been, it doesn't seem to have come up anywhere within your reports.
Yes, no, we're reporting on those items that are current and those things that are planned. Bamwell Road, bridges on Bamwell Road, we have a comprehensive report every 6 months from our bridge inspectors, which identifies those that are in pressing need of any work. We're conscious of the condition of the Bamwell Road Bridge and considering that being a wooden structure over a waterway that effectively doesn't flow, that just holds water, it would be better replaced with a potentially even the floodway or a culvert, a box culvert, one way or the other. We're considering what action needs to be taken there, which would possibly go in the next financial year or the year after, subject to its capacity to continue to service the full traffic that it gets.
Yeah.
As to road maintenance, as with every other road, it's inspected from time to time, minor repairs done as necessary, and where it sits in the condition of all our roads as to whether it's due for any major upgrade, just sits in that priority listing.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is on page 19 under general, down the bottom, my favourite topic, liaison with Taswater on site works across Orford for D-pump station upgrades and ongoing. I'd like to make a public statement and say they are absolutely ugly and disturbing to our communities. What Taswater have done is beyond ridiculous in this day and age, as far as the ugliness of these, what do you call them, ablutions, tanks and the vents and the big boxes and monstrous boxes. It's just an absolute disgrace. Can't believe it.
Are the tanks above ground?
No, the tanks are below
Below
ground,
ground,
but it's
yes.
the infrastructure
pumps
that
above.
sits above the ground.
The green boxes.
Yeah, the green boxes, the very tall
Stacks.
stacks,
Yeah.
and they're going to be dotted around, or they are dotted around the community, and I can't believe that in this day and age that people have to put up with that sort of stuff.
Just through there, how big are they?
Huge.
Which
Well, I
would you-
don't know how big they are, Councillor Gregson. They're ugly and they're unsightly, and we're in they're within the community. You can see if you go to the Orford Bridge and have a look at that one, they're all like that. If you go to the Orford Bridge and then look back towards Tribunna along the foreshore, you'll see it. Won't miss it.
Sure, we'll all be doing that. First chance we get. Councillor Young.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, I'd like to ask Mr Porch a question about the Wailanka Road, the part commencing at the end of Charles Street and going to Earlham Road. There is a big dip there which has a load limit on it because I assume there's some safety concern, and I have noted myself when driving along the foreshore access from Orford to Earlham Road, some very large metal carrying trucks, several of them in convoy, coming along this narrow foreshore road, and some of the road where there's a hairpin bend going over I suppose a creek that seems to lead down to a beach just on the southern end of the Spring Beach area. I forget the name of the little beach there. Is there any plan or system in the pipeline to fix that aspect of Wailanka Road so those heavy trucks don't have to travel along the foreshore. I note that there has been repair to the foreshore already where these trucks have been. That's the question.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, multiple facets are the answer to that question. So first of all, the dip in Wailanka Road is actually a bridge, which is the 17-acre Creek Bridge, which you'll be aware is in our capital program this year, was in the capital program last year, is dependent on grant funds from the federal government. We've been unsuccessful twice in getting those grant funds. It also forms a part of the $6 million commitment by the state government to upgrade Wailanka Road, including that bridge and a couple of other bridges there, which is dependent on the federal government promising some $26 million for additional upgrade to Wailanka Road. So it's not without challenges to getting the funds that we require to replace that bridge. Now, in the interim, we have we've had to place a load limit on the bridge because the bridge is gradually failing. It hasn't reached the point. No, that's right. And that is the reason and purpose for any traffic over 10 tonnes being redirected around Revon Road, where we have affected some roads and minor road works to improve the hairpin corner and make it safer for the larger trucks to get around there. A couple of other areas where you mentioned, we've also carried out some works there also to make it safe for trucks going through there. It's certainly not our preference for vehicles to be going around Revon Road, but we have no option at this stage. We've got a notice from our bridge inspectors to say that you need to impose a weight limit on that bridge. And so we're at the mercy at this stage of the state and federal governments with regard to releasing funds for our grant application.
So it's dependent on money, not on council's desire or plans.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McQueen.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make a statement that probably for the first time in a long time, people have been actually praising what's been happening around this part of the world. The Wailanka Road was mentioned to me. It might be only 70% done, but it's been great. There's Ryan's Road, which has had some immediate remedial work because it's failing terribly. Somebody mentioned the Spring Beach catering or some water thing. So it's not always heard. So it's nice that multiple people have come up to ask me to pass it on.
Thank you.
There certainly has been a big increase in works around the municipality and everyone can see that and has noticed. Councillor Edwards and then Councillor Gregson.
And I would like to concur with Councillor McQueen's comments. I've heard some very positive things as well. But on Councillor Walker's point, I've been doing a lot of liaising with people in West Shelley about the Taswater stuff, as acting GM Board is well aware. And that their public relations officer is actually very good, but stuck between a rock and a hard place. We've had some instances there about the placement of 3 bollards and with a handful of people with orange vests and tin hats on, none of whom can tell you anything. And so it gets passed up the tree, and then 3 months later they come back, and something which could be solved in 2 seconds. So to the poor people on the ground, I feel sorry for them, but they do seem terribly slow in asking for some simple things that the residents there have asked for, who are getting these monolith pumps and stink pipes put on their boundary fences. They seem very slow in reacting to any pressure. And the other thing on the Wailanka Road, it always seems amazing to me that the new bridge that came in just before the Bowls Club there a few years ago, when it washed out, the water from that creek starts and finishes, comes through my farm all the way through. When it comes under the Wailanka Road just by my place, it goes through a pipe, which you can chuck it, which was chucked in there and some fill put over top of it. Yet it seems impossible to be able to do that these days. So the exact amount of water that goes under that multi-million-dollar bridge on the highway, 200 yards further up the creek, goes through a pipe. which would be a tenth of the cost. Just doesn't make sense.
Councillor Gregson, you had a question?
Yes, I'd like to, through the acting mayor, direct my questions to the acting works and infrastructure.
Who works in infrastructure,
Yes.
and director of works in infrastructure.
And I'd just like to congratulate you. You've got 99.9% correct here. You missed out on the Earlham Road. I'm very disappointed. Earlham Road. Where's Earlham Road, please?
Through you, Mr Chair, like Wailangta Road, which goes through Wailangta, Earlham Road goes through Earlham. Councillor.
Yeah. Just to the contrary. Whereabouts is Earlham?
You may consult a map that you will find, but if you follow Councillor Young home, you will find Earlham because that's where he lives. But it is to the south of the southeast of our municipality.
Right. And just also.
Don't you have a map reference?
I wouldn't mind if I like Campbell. No. With all due respect. With coal mixing of potholes across the municipality, ongoing across the municipality, approximately 4 tonne of coal mix placed for December. There's a Gordon Street between the Tasman, this is Swansea, sorry. It's Gordon Street, Swansea, between the Tasman Highway and the jetty. There's a perennial problem with the actual road as you drive towards the Tasman Highway, going up the rise, Rapville, or what you call Rapville, on the left-hand side. There seems to be a perennial problem with the road disintegrating on a continual basis. Could it be actually dug out and reformed and things like that? And also, there's always a lot of potholes there because people going up the rise, they go out and they're subject to being, for the traffic coming back, they can't see them ongoing. So could that be investigated to see what exactly is going on there?
Through you, Mr Chairman, yes, we certainly will refer that to the works manager to inspect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more questions or comments? If that's the case, I'll put the motion, all those for. It's unanimous, thank you. Number 8 in our agenda is Officers' Report requiring a decision. 8.1 is Dolphin Sands Bushfire Mitigation Assessment Report, November 2024, and that's been prepared by our Acting General Manager, Mr Peter Porch. There is a recommendation on page 22. Would anyone like to move a motion? Councillor Churchill.
I move that Council adopts the Dolphin Sands Bushfire Mitigation Assessment Report, November 2024, and commends to the General Manager to implement to the extent of Council's resource limitations, powers and delegations.
Thank you. I have a seconder. Councillor Edwards. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Churchill?
Yes, I would. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I've had a good extensive read of the 40-something pages of this report, and I think there's a lot of good information in there and a lot of good things potentially to be done. And as is pointed out in the motion, when resources allow it to be done. In the interim, we just hope that there's a lot of people learn to understand the environment they live in and that it is flammable, and a lot of care can save a lot of anxiety and a lot of expense and inconvenience to a lot of people. So I'd just like people to be aware of the risk of fire in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Churchill. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor?
Yes, I would too. I read it as well, and I was particularly impressed with the absolute pure common sense in the operational recommendations. All of it just basic, clear logic. Robert would love it because it's basically dot points saying as it is. And those the recommendations, the educational recommendations as well. They're just all simple, common sense, which shouldn't be too hard to implement. So I was impressed with that.
Excellent, good to hear.
Congratulations, Councillor Young.
Yeah, Councillor Young, would you like to comment?
So I've read the report. I concur with what both councillors have said, it is a sensible dose of recommendation.
Councillor Gregson.
Through the acting mayor, I'd like to concur with councillor Churchill. Dolphin Sands is potentially a hotspot for fire, and if this report can ameliorate the treachery of fire, so be it. So congratulations on the author and all of this.
Just on that, before we close, to you, acting general manager, is there any appetite to distribute the report widely to the Dolphin Sands community, so they can use it?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the report, part of the intention of commissioning the report is to report back to the community, particularly the Dolphin Sands community, because there are actions in here that are beholden on landowners who are the only ones who can implement those actions. And so, yes, there are actions for council, actions for other agencies, but also for landowners. So yes, the intent is to make that available to the community widely, with encouragement for landowners to carry out those actions that they can only do.
Thank you. Excellent. If there's no further comment, would you like to close debate, Councillor Churchill?
Thank you, Mayor. Just on that point, I think that a summarised version of it would be really good to all of the residents and particularly visitors to using visitor accommodation in the area, if that were possible. Possibly another suggestion. Thank you.
That can be investigated and enacted upon, it would be great. All those in favour of the motion? That's unanimous. Thank you. 8.2 is our public art and memorials policy review, prepared by Acting General Manager Mr. Peter Porch. There is a recommendation on page 24. If someone would like to move that, Councillor Young.
I move that council adopts the revised public art and memorial policy as attached to this report, item effective 28 January 2025.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Gregson. Would you like to speak?
I don't wish to speak to it. It's sensible.
Would you like
Not
to
much
speak
more I
to
can
it?
add.
Councillor Gregson, as a seconder, would you like to speak to the
Yes.
policy?
With regard to the, I'm big on public seats in public places because there's a lot of elderly people within this municipality and seats are very important, so people can just have a rest, etc. With the permission of respective families, I'd really like to see just a naming of some of those seats, significant people that may have passed away, just as a reminder of the history of the municipality and that kind of link between the past and the present.
Thank you, Councillor Gregson. Anyone else like to comment on the policy? There's no further comment. I'll move the motion. All those in favour? It's unanimous. 8.3 gifts and donations policy review, again prepared by Acting General Manager. Is that a busy month? There's a recommendation on page 26. Someone, Councillor Walker.
Thank you. I move that council adopts the gifts and donations policy as attached to this report, item effective 28th of January 2025.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councillor Young. Would you like to speak to the
No, thank
motion?
you.
No, thank you. Councillor Young? No, thank
No,
you.
sir.
There's no comment, no further comment. I'll move the motion. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. 8.4 is recognition of continuous years of service policy review. Again, prepared by Acting General Manager Mr. Peter Porch. There is a recommendation on page 28. If someone would like to move that. Councillor Young.
Deputy Mayor, I move the council adopts the recognition of continuous years of service councillors and staff as attached to the report, item effective 28 January 2025.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councillor Gregson. Would you like to speak to the?
No, sir, I don't wish to speak.
Thank you. It's Councillor Gregson. Would you like to speak to
Yes,
the
please.
motion?
Yes, please. On page 83 of the attachment that is pertinent to this discussion, a gift voucher. Then we've got 10 years of continuous service of council, $100 voucher. Then it goes 20, 30, 40, 200, 300, $400 voucher. What constitutes a voucher?
I'll direct that to our acting general manager.
General Manager, have we a dictionary I could read from it?
No, I think the general manager will be fine without the dictionary.
That's right. Look, a voucher would be a purchased card of some form that allows the recipient to be able to spend up to the value at the establishments that the card allows.
So what, just through implement to the acting general manager. So would that be something like $100 spent at Bunnings or what?
Chair, yes, that's an example of a kind. Wouldn't necessarily be that, but that's an example of.
But the recipient could ask for a Bunnings card or
Well,
a GA
can I just add to that? That most of those voucher cards now are usable in Coles,
Numerous.
liquor celebrations, Bunnings. They're grouped together. There's two major groups, Bunnings and the Coles group, and then there's the Mitre 10 group, and they're all linked to those cards. So they have numerous options with those voucher cards.
with the same owner, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, thank you.
If there's no, there is further comment. Thank
Yeah.
you, Councillor McQueen.
Thank you. One of the things that I'd like to see is recognising that it's a cumulative service, not continuous service. So if you like replacing the cumulative for the word continuous through here. There are various sets of people within the community, particularly women who have children who might leave and come back 3 years later, 2 years, because of parenting responsibilities, which still continue to fall mostly to women. There's also people who may have had significant health issues or the like, or who've young and moved away. So I commend the policy, but would like to suggest that we replace continuous, which suggests a person can't leave for a period, with a cumulative, because the service would still be the same,
Thank
even
you.
if they've had
Councillor.
interruption.
Yes, and I assume that's a conversation for the next review or sometime in the future. That would need further discussion, I would imagine.
Through Mr. Chair, we endeavoured to pick that up, but probably ineffectively in 2.1, where we've indicated there that, and from the workshop where Councillor McQueen raised this, was that we've included a sense in recognition of the cumulative community service delivered in the respective roles over time. It probably doesn't go quite far enough. I think Councillor McLean is quite right that we want it, that the intent of it is that, that yes, we do want to enable for those people who have those breaks in their service to not lose the benefits entitled to which others might be afforded. I'm open to, I mean, we have a motion there which is, which names the policy. So, the motion would have to be amended to change the name of the policy effectively to recognition of continuous and cumulative, perhaps.
Would anyone like to, Councillor Young?
Deputy Mayor, I'd like to ask the General Manager through you, if someone becomes pregnant, and bearing in mind what some North American politicians say about the sort of people who can or can't become pregnant, I assume that if they get leave of absence, it's not a lack of continuous service, and the policy might work quite well to cover the things that Councillor McQueen is concerned about if they're given leave of absence, albeit quite long. So otherwise the policy because of the way I've moved the motion, would require an amendment and discussion, and we couldn't deal with it today.
Is it a reasonable summation?
Through the chair, yes, look, I think that is a reasonable summation. If you've got leave, you're still within the organisation, you haven't left the organisation. Is where someone might leave the organisation entirely, go work somewhere else and then come back to the organisation, that policy wouldn't actually capture that.
Cumulative. So it would be cumulative and continuous.
Not as it stands.
No, but it can be changed quite simply to reflect.
That would be, if the motion was to be changed, I believe that would be up to Councillor Young and the seconder to make that change. And I think,
Yeah, we would need a motion to amend the motion.
Yeah.
Which would be voted on, and then if that became a substantive motion, that would be voted on.
And also, point of order, so we'd have to consider the amendments, because quite often quick amendments have unusual consequences.
Yeah.
So I would not accept, to the extent I have the power, a motion to amend my motion. I'd like my motion to be put.
Councillor McQueen.
Can I put a motion that this be deferred and a new one be presented to us in the context of the discussion that's just occurred?
What do we do with the motion that's on the table? Vote on it.
Or that it just be deferred?
If you can defer.
I would accept that motion, that the matter be deferred.
Okay. Okay, good. Well, that, if council's in agreement, as a majority, we will defer that motion and we'll get some more information about adding the word cumulative and the repercussions of that for our next meeting, perhaps.
Thank you.
So you actually need to put this motion, get lost, and then the next motion is going to be, is that correct?
Yeah.
Because this one's live motion.
Yeah, live motion. Okay, yeah, I think Councillor Walker makes a good point there. We do have a live motion on the table and needs to be either moved on or off. Councillor Churchill.
Can I just make a suggestion? I think it's in order for the mover, and provided the seconder agrees, I think it can be withdrawn.
Slightly.
If withdrawing it would facilitate what Councillor McQueenie quite rightly raises, I'd be quite content to withdraw the motion that I put. So I seek to have the motion withdrawn if the seconder would support.
Councillor Gregson, do you support that?
I do support that.
Can I just say through you, Deputy Mayor, surely Councillor Young's point that if somebody is on leave, they're still in, as effect, continuous employment.
Yep.
So what's the problem?
I think probably the issue might be that your leave can run out and you move. And an example would be of perhaps a lady that maybe has a baby and has 3 years away from the job, which effectively puts her in a resignation position and then comes back to the job, that service be picked up and recognised. I suspect that's what we're not picking up. Is that correct? Yes. So,
The difference is only slight, but there is a difference.
yeah. So if that's within the rules of our meeting procedures, Councillor Walker might have an opinion on that, having lots of experience.
My opinion is that this is a live motion, it should be voted on, and then,
I've withdrawn it.
but can you withdraw it?
We
And
confirm
then-
that can be withdrawn. I suppose that's the issue.
That's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, I mean, I can't recall ever anyone withdrawing a motion in my time.
It's regulation 16 of the 2015 Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulation 2015.
Number 8, page 27. Councillor who has moved a motion, whether it is being debated or not, may only withdraw the motion with the consent of the seconder,
Mhm.
if a seconder was required, or with the consent of the meeting. So,
I think we've got that consent, so we will be doing that. Thank you. That was all those subjects about. And we'll bring that back, obviously, general manager with a mechanism to allow that to happen. 8.5 is our personal and private information policy review. There is a recommendation on page 30 if someone would like to move. Councillor Young.
I move that council adopts the personal and private information policy as attached to the report, item effective 28 January 2025.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Gregson. Would you like to comment on the motion, Councillor Young?
Yes, only briefly to say that privacy is important and having a policy does aid the interpretation of the various acts. And there are, I think, 1, 2, 4 of them. Otherwise, I've nothing to add.
Thank you. Councillor Gregson.
I concur with Councillor Young. I think it's good to have it in a policy form. And I concur with Councillor Young.
Councillor McQueenie and then Councillor Edwards.
through you, Acting Mayor, to the General Manager, just to confirm that this, for clarification, that this information policy relates as effectively to the business internally, if you like, of this, and not, for instance, to health information, which would sit separately and does sit separately.
I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor, I didn't hear the last sentence. My
Just,
hearing aid has just had a rest.
Yeah.
I can't turn them up.
my question or for clarification was whether this information policy relates to, if you like, the organisation and its what it effectively does and employees and the like, rather than health information, which is handled in a more specific way already. And if it does, perhaps it's just worthwhile mentioning that.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I can only refer to the policy scope, which applies to all councillors, council employees, contractors, workplace participants and volunteers of council, and covers any personal information that is collected, retained, stored and used by council where it's necessary for one or more of council's functions or activities. That is the scope of the policy. If it's considered that that scope of the policy is overly covers more than what councillors believe is appropriate or needs some greater definition associated with it, then it may be that this policy could be reworked.
If I may.
Councillor McQueenie.
Just in terms of health information having additional legislation requirements, I think that yes, it either needs to state those because they are delivered through contractors currently, or within the policy itself to address that, noting that they're managed elsewhere, or if it is to cover contractors, then this needs to be reworked. So perhaps yes.
Councillor Edwards had a question and then Councillor Churchill.
I was just making a comment on data security. I know there's no other way you can word it, but it still doesn't fill you full of confidence. Council will take all reasonable steps to ensure personal information is stored safely and securely. I know you can't word it any other way, but nothing's guaranteed, is it?
Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, I just, thank you, Mayor. I just have a question around the termination. At what point in time, it may be in the policy and I've missed it, at what point in time does that information be removed, destroyed or whatever? Is that at the termination of a person's employment or association with council, or is there a time frame around it after that?
Through Mr. Chairman, there are a range of, the Archives Act 1983 provides advice on deletion of particular files or the way things are to be retained and for how long. Generally, records after a period of time go into long-term storage off-site, as most councils do. There are a number of different acts require different lengths of time, even separate to the Archives Act. So the range of different acts that we have responsibilities under provide greater and more detailed descriptions of the way in which we need to keep records and manage those records. So the policy gives a broad overview of what the requirements are. The individual legislation that manages more precisely the keeping of those records gives us the details.
So,
No, thank you. All I can say is at this point in time, it's about time we had a policy that's this strong.
Just can I ask a question, perhaps to you, Acting General Manager, which goes back to Councillor Churchill's question a little bit about the time we keep records. Is there an active process within the administration that would actually identify records that are due to be disposed of?
Through Chairman, yes, there is. So regularly, our records officer regularly works through and identifies records that under the particular legislation have reached the end of their holding period and seeks approval for removal off-site, deletion, destruction, etc. as necessary.
So just through this acting general, acting mayor, what happens when a councillor leaves council? How many years before details are extinguished or deleted?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I have no idea. That's why we have good records people who consult the various acts and things to make those, again, to consult the various records that need to be administered in accordance with the legislation that they are there for. So I couldn't tell you exactly that particular information.
Councillor Young.
Just the Deputy Mayor, I'd like to remind everyone that being closer to the end of the run than many, I don't think that my date of birth, if it was disclosed to other people after the date of my demise, that I'd even care less. So whether or not you feed a formal policy or an act of parliament or something about it, to me is immaterial, and there are many other things like it. And you can't cover everything. Do the best you can.
And that's a fair point, but it may not apply to someone that's younger or has a different circumstance within council, so it does need to be considered. I was just going to ask councillors where we landed with the policy and the health side of it. Are we withdrawing the policy to review the policy to take that into account, or are we going to vote on this policy and then look at the consequences?
It does, if I may, it does mention health in here.
But not the legislation.
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman,
I'd be
the administration will be satisfied to have the policy set aside for a moment, the motion withdrawn while we review that, and just to clarify that that the adequacy of the legislation referenced is satisfactory, or whether it needs some further work.
I think that's probably a sensible idea, but it would require Councillor Young withdrawing his motion
I agree.
for the second time ever, and it would need the support of Councillor
Sorry, I
Rex
moved.
for the second time ever.
I thought it was useful.
That being said, the motion is withdrawn and will be set aside and have further information added to it in the future. Thank you. good. 8.6 is our stormwater policy for new developments, and there is a recommendation on page 33. Councillor Young.
At risk of having to withdraw the motion, I would propose that the council adopts a stormwater policy for new developments as attached to this report, item effective 28 January 2025.
May I have a second, please?
Shall I second it? So I'm going through it.
Councillor Gregson.
I'd like to speak briefly to the motion.
Absolutely.
We have had a lot of stormwater troubles. A lot of it comes through unusually great, larger expansion than we previously have considered even possible. I only have to look at the Southern Tasmanian Regional Land Use Strategy, which was all the be-all and end-all about how big or small councils and populations would be. And like many a government policy, you could be absolutely sure it was wrong, and it was. And as a result, having that sort of approach in the past, some of the stormwater infrastructure has not been adequate. It was designed for smaller size expansion and possibly doesn't even cover the odd occasion of a flood. So I think it's a very good policy to have. A lot of thought's gone into it. We ought to adopt it.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Gregson?
With regard to the stormwater policy for new developments, the biggest complaint that I have from constituents of this municipality is stormwater. I think the acting gentleman would be able to back me on that if I do refer those items to him. There is one really important thing I'd like to raise, and that's new developments in flood-prone areas with regard to stormwater. Does the council take into account to exclude the flood-prone areas within the new development and just develop the ones that are not flood-prone?
Through you, Mr Chairman, council doesn't develop the areas. Individual property owners develop the areas. So council is required to consider those applications that come before it. Hence, having a policy to assist those developers with the considerations they need to make is of vital importance. This is a new policy. We haven't had one for stormwater before. It will assist developers. It won't overcome every obstacle or every challenge, but it assists developers to understand what their requirements are.
Thank you. Councillor Quinn.
Thank you. Through you, Acting Mayor, to the General Manager. I attended a hearing, a tribunal hearing, which was not secret, at which in relation to, and in fact it was a known flood area, but there's flood areas and flood areas, some are more prone, at which the issue of stormwater management and what costs may be brought by the developer came up. And so in two instances, and Clarence and Brighton councils were mentioned, where because of the particular circumstances of the development and because of the proprietary solutions, etc., that have been chosen, and therefore the burden every 6 months, 12 months or whatever on council paying for the ongoing, were actually factored into a contribution by the developers. So that over and above what might be an open space or whatever. So my question is, does this policy simply state what the developer's got to do, or does it also state, and forgive me if I've overlooked it, that there may be circumstances, given the particulars of any particular development or proprietary or whatever, where council may look to pass, potential costs on to developers. Because if we don't do that, then it seems to me the Clarence and Brightons can't happen if we would wish to pursue that approach.
Through you, Chairman, there's no restriction on us doing that now, and we do that.
Okay, great. Okay, that was.
Thank you. Is there any other questions or comments? Councillor Young, would you like to close?
All that has been said, is sufficient.
Thank you. I'll move the motion. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. Family and domestic violence policy and procedure as prepared by our executive officer and the responsible officer, acting general manager. There is a recommendation on page 36. If someone would like to move that, Councillor Young. Is there a seconder?
Oh, sorry.
Do I have a seconder?
I better move the motion.
Oh, sorry.
The council, the motion is that council adopts the family and domestic violence policy and procedure as attached to this report effective 28 January 2025.
And can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Walker. Would you like to speak to the
Briefly,
motion?
sir. It goes into detail what ought to be done to help people that are subject to domestic violence problems. You can't define every item of domestic violence, and it involves a matter of judgment. But the people that do suffer things do need help, and it's a very good idea to have a policy that'll put us on the right track in acting.
Thank you. Councillor Walker. Thank you. Does anyone else care to comment on the policy? Councillor McQueen.
I absolutely welcome it, and it's good to see the council responding in this way, and it's quite comprehensive. The only comment I would make is under 3.1 on page 7 of 8 of the policy, or 113 of the agenda pack, and it's really about clarity. 3.1 talks about if both the perpetrator and victim are working in the same area, then it will be assessed and managed by senior executive and HR. I have personally witnessed in a certain work situation where and they were prosecuted, perpetrator and victim worked in the same area. The perpetrator's skills were far rarer and of more importance to the organisation going forward. And so due consideration was given to that rather than the issue of how each of those people stand. So I suppose for me, I don't know if it's possible to add that 3.1, yes, on a case-by-case basis, but at least consistent with the principles, which clarifies then, without any need for any other word, that those principles where the victim can't be disadvantaged, if you like. So that's all, but yes, good work.
Yeah. That's a reasonable request. I'm not sure how we include it.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the point of the policy is it points out what the principles are. So restating them, I don't see that restating them makes it any clearer.
If that's explicit. Yep, as long as it is a template like that.
Does anyone else have any comment on the policy? If that's the case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. And carried. 8.8 is a request for event support, the Spoke Festival 2025.
Thank you.
Councillor Walker, there is a recommendation on page 41.
Yep, I'll move that council approve the event support application for Swansea Motocross Association Limited for the Spoke Motorcycle Festival 2025, providing a cash contribution of $2,000 and in-kind support subject to available resources.
Yes, seconder, Councillor Edwards. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I'd like to reserve,
Councillor
thank you.
Councillor Edwards, would you like to speak to the motion?
I will, yes. I rang the organiser of this event to get an understanding of how it all went last year. And I rang Bruce Dunbavin, whose property the event is held on. Mr. Dunbavin said that it's very much a family event. He said it's incredibly professionally run. He would only associate his property and his land with an organisation which does run incredibly professionally. He said it's a very high level event with good stall holders, good behaviour. He couldn't actually speak highly enough of the event being held on his property. Then I spoke to the fellow who organises the festival. He said last year they had 883 people there over 3 days. A lot of interstate attendees, 50 had come just for the festival and were staying on an average 14 and a half nights in Tasmania. East Coast accommodation, camping, everything has a strong financial advantage from this festival being held there. I asked him about the environmental things he had done. He said they have a lot of signs educating people. They have conveyor belt for dunes, crowd control fencing, directions. An environmental scientist who's associated with the festival sets up the beach race, which is on about 100 metres of a privately owned beach, not on the whole beach, just the one end. It's monitored daily. It's monitored for the days before the race for any bird activity, if they've not seen any yet. But if there was some, it would be cordoned off and secured professionally. They're on the beach for approximately an hour and 20 minutes for the event on the Saturday afternoon. During setup to date, they've not seen a plover there. Photos after the race, so the next day show no trace of anything at all the next morning. It's as if they'd never been there. So that was the feedback I got from them. I'll be strongly. The other point I'd like to say is whilst some councillors may not like this sort of event, it's an event which I would go to. I would still support the Echo Festival, even though I wouldn't go to it because it's not my scene. So I think it's very important that we don't let a personal bias prevent supporting of an event which, by all accounts, is extremely well run with an extremely good, well-behaved crowd.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Councillor Gregson.
I'd just like to make an amendment to this motion, and that would be that council will supply, deliver and collect bins as resources permit. Council will provide a supply of bin liners to be used for each bin, with any unused bin liners returned to the council at the end of the event. The bins must be emptied regularly by the event organisers and returned in the same condition they were provided. Damaged bins are to be repaired and replaced at the cost to the organiser. Now it says here, provide a financial contribution of $2,000 towards the expense of the event, on the condition that the beach is not used as part of the event. And I would like that to be referred back to the organiser. Discussion.
I think was there an amendment to the motion being proposed?
I think so, was the amendment. So it would be up to the movers of the motion to decide whether they would like that.
No.
So I'd ask it. So,
Second of the,
and the second is
no,
said,
second for the amended motion.
can you do that?
If there's a motion, call for a second for the, and if there's a second for it, then you can debate the motion. If there's not a second for it, the motion lapses and there's no change to the motion that's there.
So what's the motion, Councillor Gregson?
It's basically on page 41, and it goes, the council will supply, deliver and collect bins, resource permit. Council will provide a supply of bin liners to be used for each bin. With any unused bin liners returned to the council at the end of the event. The bins must be emptied regularly by the event organisers and returned in the same condition they were provided. Damaged bins are to be repaired and replaced at the cost to the organiser. And then it's got provide a financial contribution of $2,000 towards the expenses of the event, provided on the condition that the Mayfield Beach is not a part of the event.
It's not the main public beach, it's the privately owned beach.
I'm not sure that's from City Marshal.
It's, if I may,
Yes, councillor Walker.
the office has got, it's within the, it is within the report, what is it, and also it's part of the policy, those that council will supply, that's all part and parcel of it
That's
all.
right, that's right, that's part of one motion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it
exactly.
is, but it already is, it's already there, that doesn't need to be done, and
It's
as,
a motion.
you can't, I mean, I won't accept, provide a financial contribution of $2,000 towards expenses as long as it, I mean, that's holding people ransom.
No, it's not.
Of course it is.
No, it's not. No, no.
Well,
no.
Excuse me, point of order.
Councillor Churchill.
There is an amendment to the motion being put forward. The next part of the process, I believe, is to call for a seconder to that motion.
Thank you, councillor Churchill. What I'm trying to ascertain is the actual motion. The motion,
The motion is the motion plus a condition, which is included in the motion.
Perhaps we confirm whether the administrative officer's got the motion in.
which is,
This is effectively that with the, Chair, so you got the amendment motion, would you like to, can you read it? Yes, send it through to me and I'll read it and just make sure, just confirm that we have. So can we clarify, through you, Mr. Chairman, that council provide a supply of bin liners to be used for each bin, with any unused bin liners returned to the council at the end of the event. The bins must be emptied regularly by the event organisers and returned in the same condition they are provided. Damaged bins are to be repaired, replaced at the cost of the organiser. Provide a financial contribution of $2,000 towards expenses of the event on the condition that the Mayfield Beach is not part of the event. Is that correct?
and that's correct. So the other two dot points, the event organiser will be required to these part of the motion. But they don't form part of the motion, that they would be required to supply photographs to council. Grant permission for use, and they encourage the event organisers to reconsider holding beach races.
I don't know.
We have a seconder.
Second
Councillor
motion.
Churchill. Second the motion. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, yes, no, it's just that, having a look at the history of the event, it started evidently in 2022 without any contribution of council. It came back again in 2024 with a asked a financial contribution of $4,000 to be used for professional photography and videography to capture and showcase the festival, $3,500 for hire, public toilets, accessible toilet and shower blocks. So it's quite a contribution they asked from council of $6,500. Last year, council said we'll supply the bins, etc., and that's all. But there was an intervention by councillors, I think it was on, would have been Councillor Wood and the acting mayor at the moment, to grant $2,000 with in-kind support. The organiser also asked Eric Waller, who's an expert in bird life, etc., with regard to Mayfield Beach, and he thought it was an absolute disaster to have motorcycles on the beach. Before settling on Mayfield Beach, the public beach was asked to be part of that program. National Parks and Wildlife rejected that, but that's why they went to the Mayfield Beach, where they proposed to have that race. So I have great reservations. I had a look at the photos after the event last year, and I saw one motorbike distributing sand from the back wheel. Now, is that the image that this municipality wants to present, or does it want to have a peaceful environment? And whereas this organisation can quite happily go about Mayfield Estate and do what they like, but to just incorporate the beach for a short period of time, is it really worth it? I don't think so. I have great reservations about that. That's the only reservation I have about the event. No question about that. But I feel really quite strongly about the environment, the beach, and for such a short period of time, and the images that will portray to people visiting the municipality.
Thank you, Councillor Gregson. Councillor Churchill, would you like to?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yes, I've seconded this motion, and my feelings on the matter are very similar to what Councillor Gregson has already said. This event, without the beach component of it, I would have no objection to and would willingly support. There are people who believe that the disturbance of 100 metres of beach for a short period of time is acceptable. I don't find this an acceptable risk to the feeding and breeding sites of our native fauna. As Councillor Gregson's already said, Parks and Wildlife refused this event on beaches under their management, and Dr. Eric Waller, who is certainly one of our most eminent shorebird specialists in this state, has strongly opposed this event also. The hooded plover is a likely inhabitant of this beach, and if you understand and you know the movement of these birds, within minutes or hours they can move great distances along the beach. So to say that any component of the beach is not part of their breeding or feeding ground is certainly inaccurate. I note in this report to the agenda, and this is with respect to the author, in the report to the agenda, the key foundation number 2 of Glamorgan Spring Bay's strategic plan is submitted as our community. I'd also like to remind you that the key foundation for our environment is equally as important and relevant to the context of this request. I would urge people to support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards.
Speaking to the organiser, he said one of the major attractions for the close to 1,000 people who come to the event is the hour and a half out of 8,760 hours in a year that they want to use part of a privately owned beach, where last year a hooded plover, as you said yourself, Councillor Churchill, a likely habitat, doesn't mean they're there, as none were seen last year, you don't know whether they're going to be seen or not. For an hour and a half out of 8,760, the major attraction to the event is the beach race on 100 metres of privately owned beach. Now, if Councillor Gregson has a big issue with a photograph of sand coming from a tyre, we best ban all four-wheel drives from launching boats in the sea, because invariably they spin their tyres when they come out. It is, what sort of overreach do we want on people's private property?
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor McQueen.
Part of being on the Dog Management Committee included having a whole range of people come to talk to us about the competing interests of people, birds, animals, and etc., and the impact of the disturbance, and that included Parks and Wildlife, included Birdlife Tasmania and others. And it's an inconvenient truth maybe, but the truth is this is a nesting ground, and the truth is this time of year is a nesting period. So I've got no problem with this festival happening, including the beach, if it happens outside of the nesting period, because then it's not doing known harm to endangered folk and species. I've got no problem with, or we have no sway on whether they want to run this festival, including the beach. Including the beach. What I don't think is reasonable, given our commitment to our environment, the knowledge of what our rare native animals are, our knowledge about this time of year, that we should be giving money to something that could happen at another time of year or not include the beach. Happy to support them then too. But I don't think we should be throwing our environment and endangered species under the bus. Part of the information that was delivered to us is it takes 30 seconds for fatal nest incidents to happen because of disruption. And it's got nothing to do with bias, it's just got to do with the science about time of year, the nesting, habitat, and effect of disruptions, and a bunch of motorbikes is just significant. So if I would be happy to support, if it was a different time of year on the beach, I would be happy to support this time of year if it doesn't include the beach, but we shouldn't be throwing out birds under the bus.
Comments?
I've got one coming. I've got
Okay,
one
sorry.
coming.
Well, I'll just say, look, I won't support councillor Gregson's amendment. I think we've got to consider this event for what it is in the same prism that we look at the other events, and that's about the positive economic effects. We live in, we cohabitat with nature pretty well on the East Coast, I think. There's a big opportunity to educate the goers at the festival. I think it's a chance to actually let them onto a very small part of the beach and experience that without having to potentially do it out of hours when there's no supervision. So I don't think that's a bad thing after all. And I certainly appreciate Eric Waller's expertise in this area, but his opinion does suit his narrative. The beach is inspected, having talking to the organisers and the environmental science guy they've got on board with them. They inspect the beach regularly before the event and after the event. Now, interestingly, last year, and I'm confident there are no nesting sites there on that piece of beach. And the reason I'm confident of that is that last year, a week after the event, we had a medium-sized southerly swell come through the bay, and it took 3 feet of sand off that piece of beach to the high water mark. So I just don't think that small piece of beach is a consideration. We've got a sanctuary further north of that, which gives a safe space to our breeding birds. So I just feel like that I'd like to support the event, so I can't support this motion. Thank you. Councillor Walker.
If I may, you took the words completely out of my mouth, so therefore I really haven't got much to say. But just say I will support what you just said. It's a report. There is fors and against within the report. It's not all about them. There are, you know, the event organiser informs that the beach race will occupy the northernmost 100 metres of the beach, and that the balance of the beach will be demarcated as off limits to motorcycles. So it's off limits to motorcycles. Is it going to be off limits to people walking on the beach as well, disturbing the birds or whatever? You know, where do we draw the line? I mean, as you said, we do cohabitate with the environment as well. We have to, but gee whiz, won't be supporting Councillor Gregson. I think he's holding his motion is holding the event organisers to ransom.
Point of order. Point of order.
Well, I'm just saying.
Point of order. Point of order. I'll just go through the acting there. I think that's an allegation that's unsubstantiated.
That's okay. That's
Thank
fine.
you.
I'm just saying what I feel.
And I like Councillor
Walker
to withdraw that, please.
the comment.
Yes.
I'll withdraw the comment. I've said it, but I'll withdraw it.
On that basis, Councillor Gregson, if there's no further comment, would you like to close the debate?
Yes. I'm just having a look at the application, which is publicly available. A request for funding, that the funds will assist in delivery and storage of on-site drinking water. Now, the council asked for quotes here. There was no quote. Why wasn't there any quotes in part of the application? Other applications for funds always put quotes in and how much they're donating towards that event. There's no quote here, so how can $2,000 be requested without any quote?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have what's been presented to us, and if you feel that's inadequate, we can talk to you then.
Thank you. And also here with the benefits of the events of Wall and Spring Bay, it's got here of heritage and history. How does this motorcycle event benefit the heritage and history of this municipality?
They educate people.
No, it's heritage and history, it's not education.
Well, that is.
Point of order,
education.
Mr Chairman. These questions relate to the original motion, not to the amendment. So I ask that the Speaker adhere to his reply to the matters raised in this discussion about this amendment, not about the original motion.
I take Councillor Young's advice. Yes, well, of course, I will support the event as long as it's on no further state.
But that's not that's not the motion.
No. Well, in actual fact, I will basically, I won't support the event if it involves the beach.
Point of order again, Mr Chairman. It's a question of the amendment to the motion, not the event.
So on that basis, if you've concluded, I'll put the motion to the vote. Those,
Can we have the motion again?
Which goes first, the motion or the amended?
it's the amended one. So the amended motion, if I'm, well, actually, yes, if the general manager can read.
That council provide a supply of bin liners to be used for each bin, with any unused bin liners returning to the council at the end of the event. The bins must be emptied regularly by the event organisers and returned in the same condition they were provided. Damaged bins are to be repaired, replaced at the cost of the organiser. And 2, provide a financial contribution of $2,000 towards expenses of the event on the condition that the Mayfield Beach is not part of the event.
Can I just have a clarification? Is that possible? So are you saying they get the bins, but not the $2,000 if they stay on the beach? Or they get nothing?
Well, yes, they could get the bin liners, but not $2,000. That's correct. They can still proceed, but without $2,000.
The motion doesn't make that clear.
No, it doesn't.
All right, then. Or I'll get, all right.
Could we not just put the original motion up and see if it passes?
One bit ambivalent about the whole thing. If I don't, it's against it.
So councillors, it's a rather poor motion, but we seem to be in a position where we have to vote on it, so I'll move the motion. All those in favour? Councillor McQueen, Councillor Gregson, Councillor Churchill, all those against?
I abstain.
Councillor Edwards, Councillor Walker and myself, Councillor Simons, which is a lost motion. So we're back to the original motion, which we've now discussed. We need to discuss that motion. Discuss that motion. So the advice is that the original motion will now be back in play, and that motion is that council approves the event support application for Swansea Motorcycle Association Limited for the Spoke Motorcycle Festival 2025, providing a cash contribution of $2,000 in in-kind support subject to available resources, and that was moved by Councillor Jenny Walker and seconded by Councillor Neil Edwards.
If I may, I think the amended motion was one.
No, it was lost because I abstained.
So it was 4.
Three.
Right, okay, gotcha.
Three.
Sorry, beg your pardon.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's fine. So would you like to speak to your motion again?
No,
Councillor
thank
Walker?
you. I think everyone's clear on how I feel about it.
Councillor Edwards,
I
would you like
reserve
to
my
add?
right.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else like to speak to the motion? Would you like to close the motion?
Look, it's one of those emotive ones. However, you know, we support all sorts of festivals around the community. You know, and these people, in my opinion, are doing everything right, other than possibly using 100 metres of the beach for an hour and a half, so whatever it is. So, you know, I'm just perplexed. I really am perplexed by it all. So, can I please have you put the motion?
I certainly can.
Thank you.
All those in favour of the motion? We've got Councillor Edwards, Councillor Walker and Councillor Simon. All those against the motion? Councillor Gregson, Councillor McQueenie, Councillor Churchill and Councillor Robert Young is abstaining. That's 3 also. That is a lost motion.
So, that's it. That's the end of it.
Thank you. So that, just to be clear on that, that means there is no support for the event whatsoever, which is a poor result considering that every councillor here wanted to support the event. So, yeah. Anyway. Part 9 of our agenda is notices of motion. There are nil, and there are nil petitions. And 11, are there any questions on notice by councillors? No. And are there any comments or statements from councillors? Councillor McQueen and then Councillor Gregson and then Councillor Edwards.
Just a comment for the awards that were given out on the weekend, and thank Councillor Walker for her MC and the Mayor for providing them. It was a really good turnout for that award thing. I reckon there were about 150 people present. It celebrated the service of people over decades for arts, for emergency services, for establishing community organisations, for mental health, for wellbeing, for Men'Shed, for RSL involvement. It was absolutely fantastic to hear the stories. Those who missed out, only missed out for the want of not having enough wards, really. And just to note to the community and thank everybody who was both put forward and ultimately that difficult decision about who received them.
Thank you. Councillor Gregson.
With regard to the opening of the Foreshore Walk on the 21st of January 2025, a resident
At Coles Bay, are we
Coles
talking
Bay, yes, a resident and or residents did approach me, and with regard to the actual walk, they were quite, concerned about the amount of fuel, as in dead wood and trees, etc. They were saying they were of the opinion that that was okay in national parks, but on a walk like that, which is close to a residential area, it may be an increase of fuel and a fire risk. I was wondering what councils.
Yeah, sorry, it's comment and statements.
Yeah.
This isn't question time.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so
So I'd just like that to be noted for council's request. And also, the resident also was of the opinion, and this is not a question, but she was concerned, which is along the walk, which is quite a substantial walk and quite a scenic walk, that no camping site was not on Little Cove she was quite concerned about that having fires in the area and with the accumulated fire risk that I've just previously explained. So that was a resident's concern with regard to that area. And I just wish to portray that to the acting general manager for his information. With regard to the small horse festival, which is put on by Woodfordia, which is the name of the Woodford Folk Festival site. That was an absolutely fantastic event held in the Swansea Hall on the 16th of January 2025. And I'd like to congratulate all the people involved in that who brought that to fruition. So that was really good. And also a member of the public also did approach me with regard to sporadic tussing, especially around the Swansea area, but throughout the whole municipality. And she was wondering whether she could address council at a workshop with regard to this exponential breakout of noxious weed. So I'd like to put that forward as a possible workshop and to supply the name of the person who will conduct that.
Thank you, Councillor Gregson. Councillor Edwards?
Yeah, just to add to Councillor Gregson's comments about the resident with the foreshore and the no camping. The resident spoke to myself and acting GM Porch on the day, so that was all in hand.
Okay.
What I would like to make a statement about, I was absolutely disgusted to see the post by CoHealth saying change the date on social media. They're an organisation that has been employed by council to run medical centres, not post political messages. They receive a substantial amount of money from the ratepayers to do that job. And when every poll that has been had over this last couple of weeks have ranged from 63% to 87% in don't change the date. If CoHealth had come out and said don't change the date, I'd be equally as disgusted. They're a medical service provider, not a political advocacy group. And for us to be paying them the amount of money we do, I think that they need to be, if we have any say in what they do, which I think we should, the amount of money we give them, we say we would prefer they refrained from political messaging. I was horrified to see it.
Okay. Anyone else got any statements?
I'll
Comments?
just reiterate with what Councillor McQueenie said with regards to Australia Day Award. It was a great celebration. And also to reiterate what Councillor Gregson said with Festival Small Halls, it was a fantastic show. It was very well attended, and we're very, very lucky within our communities to have these things come to us. So I think they come every 2 years, so hopefully they'll be back, and we'll be able to see some more interesting performances.
Thank you. That's all. We'll move on to item 12, which is confidential items, closed session. In accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulations 2015, the Mayor is to declare the meeting closed to the public in order to discuss the following matters. Item 1, minutes of closed session ordinary council meeting held on the 10th of December 2024. Item 2, Coles Bay Swanee Town Management Contract. And item 3, personnel matter. There is a recommendation on the page 45. Thank you, Councillor Walker.
Thank you. I'll move that council moves into closed session at 3:51 p.m.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor McQueenie. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. If we could just confirm the streaming is off.